What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another weekend recap. We have European regular season league action to talk about as Bundesliga, Ligue 1, and of course the Premier League got underway this weekend. That is where we are going to focus for the entirety of this video. Most of it will be spent on the Premier League. There is nowhere other to start than Manchester United. The Erik Ten Hag era gets underway. 2-1 loss to Brighton. At the very beginning of this game, my first reaction was, well, that looks like an Erik Ten Hag team. Controlling the ball, created a few chances. It was very different from what you saw from Manchester United over the last couple years, playing on the counter, not really having ideas. I was very impressed with the opening minutes. And then it just fell off the rails and we got back to Manchester United doing all of the things Manchester United has become known for in recent years. Pascal Gross opens up the scoring, and then you start seeing the unorganized defense where runners aren't getting tracked. It seemed like every time Brighton was building an attack, which they really struggled to do in the first 15 or so minutes, but then once they got going, there was somebody getting into space that wasn't being marked. Players were losing track of runners and getting beat to spots. It was the same defensive issues Manchester United have been having. And then you look at the response to going 2-0 down, and particularly after the first goal. Didn't see much changing there either. First 10-15 minutes, I was optimistic that Erik Ten Hag had done way more to change the situation than I thought was possible in that short amount of time. And 15 minutes later, it became very clear that was not the case, and this is still the same Manchester United. Now, they did possess the ball well overall. Part of that is, of course, you're chasing a game down 2-0. They do end up getting a goal back. But I do think we're going to see more possession from Manchester United this season. Here's the problem. In the Premier League last year, Manchester United's 4 games where they had the most possession, they did not win a single one of them. Just because you have the ball, and this is Brighton's problem too, which is where I am at least open to the possibility of them getting into the top 6 this season, is because if they could do something with the ball, take it to that next level. They were better finishing last year, but they still didn't do an awful lot with their possession. If they can start actually creating regular chances, they absolutely have a chance to be competing for a spot in Europe. Graham Potter's doing a phenomenal job there. But it's the same problem United has, and I feel like it's going to have all of this season. Great, you have the ball. What'd you do with it? The answer typically is not very much. Possession doesn't matter if you don't create chances and actually be dangerous when you have the ball. That was part of United's problem last year, and that was part of United's problem in this game. Because Ten Hag wants the ball. His predecessors didn't really care that much about it. So you're going to see him have the ball a lot. Just doesn't matter if they can't actually turn that into scoring chances and ultimately goals. So I'm going to end this the same way I started the Erik Ten Hag era. It is my philosophy on Manchester United until something actually happens to prove me different, prove differently. I don't care who the manager is. I don't care what the style of play is. I don't particularly care who the players are. Until the mental and emotional makeup of this team, the culture, the narrative surrounding it, the way these players view themselves and this team collectively changes, we are going to be talking about the same things. It's going to be the same story over and over and over. Erik Ten Hag is a great coach. He can't change this overnight. There's too much work to do, and it is too internal. It is not tactical stuff. They're going to change some things. They're going to look differently. I think there's even an argument they made some progress even in that area, even in this loss. This is not anything like what he had to do at Ajax. He came into a well-oiled machine and elevated it and got the most out of individual players. This is rebuilding from the ground up, establishing a culture, and getting players to completely change their mindset. That doesn't happen quickly. Maybe he can do it, maybe he can't. But blaming this on him, or a poor season on him, putting him on the hot seat even, isn't going to solve the problem. You have to be patient with this. He's as good a coach as any. So maybe they can improve a little bit ultimately once they get more familiar with his system and he can really get his style of play across. But for Manchester United to get where Manchester United is supposed to be, it's not about one player, one coach, one system. It is about redefining the culture of this club. That is going to take an extended period of time, unless Ten Hag is able to become the next Antonio Conte, Jurgen Klopp, where things just change instantly. Look at what those two managers were able to do. And even Klopp, it didn't happen immediately. He needed to get the players in to make Liverpool what they are now. I talk about this all the time, there are a handful of managers on the planet that can actually impose their will on a club and instill the culture they want. We will see if Erik Ten Hag is one of them. But the curtain raiser in the Premier League suggested the answer is no, or at least not immediately. To the other side of Manchester City beat West Ham as they were expected to. Two quick things to note about this game. One, Pep Guardiola decided to double down on his possession-based system by turning his outside backs into holding midfielders, essentially. Manchester City was building out of the back without outside backs. João Cancelo and Kyle Walker were just playing in the midfield, kind of next to Rodri. West Ham didn't know what to do with it in the first half. Eventually started to figure some things out, created some chances, but Erling Haaland had already scored twice by then, so it was too late. This is a fascinating tactical thing that if it continues, I want to get into more. But all I'm going to say is now, it was hard enough to get the ball off Manchester City. If Pep keeps this up, it is going to be even more difficult. And I used to be very much of the opinion that if you can keep the ball against Manchester City, that is a very, very good thing. Now, not so much. That's what Erling Haaland does. That second goal he scored, West Ham actually had control of the game for 5-10 minutes. Manchester City weren't playing well. What happens? One turnover, Manchester City gets the ball in transition, and there he is at his absolutely most dangerous, and he finishes because he's going to finish more often than not. You're not going to see that kind of goal very often because Manchester City isn't going to be in that position very often. But that is an entirely new dimension. What you're going to see a lot more of is what led to the penalty that he ultimately converted for the first goal. Those short bursts in the box to just get in front of defenders, get behind defenders, wherever it might be, to create space for himself in the split second runs. It's not his ultimate strength. His ultimate strength is what you saw in that second goal, but that is how you blend him with the system. And Manchester City found a way to do that for the first goal. Your most surprising result of the weekend, Liverpool dropping points against Fulham. Quite frankly, they were lucky to get out of that game with a point. Fulham were really, really, really good. Liverpool were not. I'm not freaking out. This happens sometimes. I'm not convinced Manchester City is going to be significantly better than last season. They might. Haaland can make that much of a difference. This was a game that didn't go well. It happens sometimes. I really want to focus more on the Fulham side of this because, Liverpool were poor. Darwin Núñez came on and scored. He needs to start moving forward. He's been terrific his last couple appearances. But the most stunning part of this game was not even that Liverpool drew. It's that Alexander Mitrovic was bossing Virgil van Dijk around. And of course, he destroyed Trent Alexander-Arnold on the first goal. But I talked about this heading into the season in my season preview in terms of storylines for Fulham. Alexander Mitrovic has never proven he is capable of being the primary attacker, that leading number 9 for a team that stays up. He is a way less productive player in the Premier League. Not just a less productive, incredibly less productive player. I don't know if I've ever seen Mitrovic play like that. He was incredible. If he is that every single week, Fulham are staying up. End of discussion. They've got enough talent. Anthony Robinson was able to keep Mo Salah in check for a half. Then they get the penalty to go back on top, hang on for the point. Really, really impressive. Now, of course, it's easy to get all caught up in this excitement. It's entirely possible Mitrovic struggles the rest of the season, never has a game like that again, and they get relegated. But this is their best shot to stay up. I believed that before because of this roster and the way they hadn't done what they did in the championship last season because nobody ever had. Watching what they did against Liverpool makes me even more confident. This is their best opportunity in this stretch where they go back and forth every single year to stay up. And by the way, Marco Silva did win 40% of his games at Everton. It wasn't always pretty. I know he has this reputation in the Premier League, and the results haven't always been pretty. But this guy can coach. I've never been as down on him as most people. And what he has done to transform this team and put this team in a position to actually be able to play that way against Liverpool. He deserves some real credit here. This is his redemption tour to prove he belongs in the Premier League. So far, so good, especially for a guy who didn't feel like his team was ready. Final thing from the Premier League, Brendan Aronson doesn't score. He's claiming the goal, but Leeds come back against Wolves to get a 2-1 win. Brendan Aronson was the best player on the field. You saw everything you are going to see from Brendan Aronson in this game. Everything that encapsulates him as a player. He is not a out-and-out goal scorer. He is not going to beat players one-on-one the way a Christian Pulisic or Gio Reyna would, if you want to keep this in the U.S. men's national team discussion. That's not who he is. He didn't score all the time in Salzburg. But what does he do better than just about any player in the world? Time and space. That first half, he was all over the place, putting pressure, forcing turnovers, doing all the things Jesse Marsch wants to do. And then he got the patented back post run, far post run, which he is exceptional at, again, time and space. Understanding when, and often it's that 20, 30 yard burst out of nowhere because he forces a turnover or his team forces a turnover and he just darts for the goal and nobody actually tracks him. That's how they forced the own goal in this game. You're going to see it time and time again. It's how he scored a couple times recently for the U.S. national team. He is so good at all of the stuff you can't quantify. And he is absolutely built for this league. He is built for this system. And I'll say this one more time, because I haven't really talked about it here. I talked about it in my preview on Substack. This invasion of, American invasion, the U.S. internationals playing for Leeds with the U.S. coach, however you want to describe it, is not about trying to prove U.S. guys can play in the Premier League or that U.S. coaches can coach in the Premier League. This is a proof of concept of everything Jesse Marsch stands for. His unapologetic, unrelenting philosophy that he will not bend from, his approach to man management, everything. This is about, can his philosophy that he will not move from 1 inch, can he actually get a team to embrace it and execute it at a level that allows for success in the Premier League? Brendan Aronson is exactly the kind of player he wants to be able to carry that vision out. I'm almost a little frustrated with how much I understand the U.S. thing, and it's a huge deal. But this, more than anything else, this is about Jesse Marsch. This is about proof of concept, because he is not Bob Bradley. He is not another U.S. manager. Brendan Aronson is not Christian Pulisic. This is about Jesse Marsch and can he do things his way and be successful. It just so happens two of the guys that are going to help him do that because of the way they play and they're familiar with his system are U.S. internationals who have played for him before. But Brendan Aronson, absolutely fantastic. Great start for Leeds. They looked more organized, as you would expect, getting a little bit more time. They're not going to be great defensively, but they seemed like there was a plan and people knew what was going on and their press was coordinated. Very, very good sort of first step with this new group. Great start for Leeds getting those 3 points. Final thing before I get out of here. Can we please stop? I don't care if it's a joke or not. Saying the Bundesliga is over and congratulating Bayern Munich for an 11th straight title because they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 6-1. Now they looked terrific. It was breathtaking stuff. Against a Frankfurt team that finished in the bottom half of the league and offered zero resistance. I mean, they weren't getting close to Bayern's attackers. They couldn't even foul them because they weren't close enough. That is not an accurate representation of what this is ultimately going to look like. And that game does not tell you how much of a loss Robert Lewandowski is going to end up being. They looked fantastic. I tweeted this. Clearly they were upset, and understandably so, about the way things ended last year and the exit to Villarreal. Right? They don't get embarrassed in the Champions League, and they did. And they didn't have a particularly good domestic season either. They came out angry, and there might not be anything scarier in this sport than angry Bayern Munich. And Eintracht Frankfurt took the brunt of it. But we're acting like Borussia Dortmund doesn't exist, and that Bayern Munich, who, by the way, scored at least 5 goals in the Bundesliga 5 times last season, still lost 5 times and drew 5 times. The only time that's happened in their run of dominance. We're acting like this Borussia Dortmund team doesn't exist, who was, I think it was 8 points back last season with a bad defense. Bayern were not great last season, and you're taking perhaps the best striker in the world off of that team. I understand they brought in Sadio Mane. I love what they did overall this transfer window. I'm not saying Dortmund's going to win the league. But to sit here and even make jokes like this is Ligue 1, and there's PSG and everybody else, and it's Bayern and everybody else. Yes, it is. But I am not ruling Dortmund out of this yet. By the way, they did win against Bayer Leverkusen, one of the toughest games on their schedule. Showed some promise defensively. Yes, they were fortunate in the second half. It was not a terrific performance. But if they can figure things out defensively and Nico Schlotterbeck looks the real deal, it just doesn't take that much for them to get to a point where they are right there with Bayern. A Bayern team that, again, was not great last season, may or may not be better this year, is integrating new pieces, doesn't have a out-and-out goal scorer, a pure striker. Yes, Sadio Mane can play in that position. I have faith in Sadio Mane playing that position. But what does it look like against the highest level of opposition when you don't have a target forward? To throw the Bundesliga in the same category as Ligue 1, where there's such a clear gap between PSG and everybody else, and by the way, PSG didn't win 2 years ago. I get frustrated with this because it's just lazy, and in this case, also just ignorant of everything Borussia Dortmund have done to improve, particularly at the back, and just how good Robert Lewandowski was. Does Bayern win the league by at least 5 points? Yeah, probably. But let's at least give Borussia Dortmund more than 1 week when they won against a better opponent. This Bayern team, this rendition coming off of last season, has not earned the benefit of the doubt to the extent that we're just going to stop caring and hand them the title after 1 week. They got a lot more to prove before I'm willing to do that. That's all we've got for today's weekend recap video. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Also, check out all of the content on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, and we'll see you next time.